So welcome back to the BioBlast podcast. I'm Devin Zeidelman, Director of Scientific Real Estate Advisory Services with Scheer Partners. We're so excited to have Neal Piper here today to chat about everything medical device and what he's doing at Luminoah. He's the CEO and founder of Luminoah and has had a lot of early successes. So we're really excited to hear from you, Neal, about your journey today and just kind of where things are in the industry as well.
It's great to see you here today, Devin. Thanks for the invitation to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. So your background is in pharma, spent time with Pfizer, amongst other companies. And, for those less familiar, can you give us some additional background on just sort of your journey to where you are now? And then we'll kind of dive in a little bit more into what Luminoah is up to.
Yeah, I was fortunate right after graduating from school, grew up in Georgia to join Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. And I was in their Neuroscience division and was in the state of Georgia. I started my career carrying the bag, going to provider offices and hospitals and even prison systems across the state of Georgia. And, so starting in sales, I had this crazy vision that was very unrealistic that I'd be the CEO of Pfizer one day. I actually mapped it out every 10 years how I would get there. So I was very driven at an early age and worked since I was 10 years old, doing different jobs and projects. And so work ethic was something that, I really saw directly from my mom and dad growing up. My mom was in healthcare as a nurse, scrub nurse, and my dad was in sales. And so that really led me, I think, perfectly into the pharmaceutical industry. And so in those early years, had some great mentors and incredible leaders within kind of the sales side of Pfizer, and that really believed in me and supported my growth at an early age. And was lucky to be a part of some great teams that were kind of top in the nation in sales, and that led into work in emerging markets. So Pfizer has a program called the Global Health Fellows Program under their Corporate Social Responsibility Department. And so you have about 15, 20 Pfizer leaders, from people in sales to the person who developed Zoloft, or VP of commercialization, that go on these 3 to 6 month assignments around the world. I was fortunate to be selected, in a 200,000 person company, in a smaller group to live in another country and do healthcare infrastructure work. So in 2009, after being with the company for 6 years, I moved to Swaziland, and Eswatini it's called now, which at the time had the highest HIV population in the world, 42% of the population. And through this partnership, public-private partnership between Pfizer and Population Services International, I did work in child and maternal health and HIV prevention programs, and that was a real instrumental part of kind of trajectory of my career. We had an incredible 6 months there in Swaziland. We're able to make a really strong impact with the team there at Population Service International. And as a result, when I returned back to Pfizer, is at the time when the company were going through some changes and some downsizing, I was fortunate to go travel a lot of the country and do talks about how Pfizer was making a positive difference on healthcare infrastructure around the world. Ultimately, that led into a series of secondments in Pfizer's New York headquarters, where I worked on a pricing project and a new malaria launch project, and started getting exposure into different areas of the pharmaceutical industry. Later, I became the first kind of elected president of a group of the Global Health Fellows Alumni Network, which, at the time there had been around, I think, 400 leaders like myself who had gone on these 6 month assignments over the past 10 years, working on, projects to develop new compounds or strengthen infrastructure, labs or distribution projects. all around the world. And we created this network to bring those learnings back to the company and to improve the outcomes of the work that we were doing and the support of the work we were doing around the world. So I did that for a year, and then ultimately, departed Pfizer. I ended up going to work for Population Services International, the NGO I was working with, and then worked in about 18 markets around the world, everywhere from Somalia to Nigeria to Nepal, Cambodia. And so I would go into a country for 2 to 3 weeks, and actually be out in the field in the community, learning about healthcare and the infrastructure in those countries. And then I would work with their leadership teams to help find gaps and put together programs to solve those gaps. So did that for a couple years, and met incredible leaders around the world. One challenge that I did face in that work is, I was working a lot with ministers of health around the world, and a lot of the challenges that I saw in healthcare in underserved markets, where you've got a higher death rate of children and from preventable diseases, was failed leadership in a lot of countries, and so I saw some corruption firsthand, and the impact of that correction on everyday people. And so I really wanted to make a big difference in kind of how do you invest in people and solve that gap, because you could invest a lot of money in solving these problems, but without good leadership, it wouldn't be possible. And so I later moved to Charlottesville, Virginia. I was in DC at the time, as part of this nonprofit startup called the Presidential Precinct, and that program brought together UVA, William and Mary, and the homes of some of the founding presidents of the United States to invest in leaders from around the world who were ministers of health or had aspirations to be presidents in their countries. So led that for about 8 years, and then that led me to then Luminoah, which I'll talk a little bit about in a moment. But I'll say that across that arc of journey of leadership, in my earlier years of life, from age 10 to 22, starting car wash companies or landscape companies, to different entrepreneurial startups to make ends meet and pay my way through college. I learned a lot about work ethic, and starting and trying out different business models at that point. Pfizer taught me what a great corporation looks like, and building infrastructure around a company and hiring really great leaders to execute. And then in developing kind of markets, I just learned about what it takes for a really good team to function, and to how to work together, and to kind of solve problems, understand gaps and needs, and then help build infrastructure around that. And then leading the Presidential Precinct helped me better understand how to develop a really incredible board of directors and build a group of advisors, but also how to build programs and to implement programs and measure outcomes. Also a lot about storytelling through that work as well. And so I'll pause there, because I could spend a whole podcast just talking about that arc.
Yeah, I mean, it's a testament to your work ethic for sure. If you haven't seen Neal, you certainly will, because he is absolutely everywhere across the Mid-Atlantic and beyond. I've had the pleasure of obviously sitting on a few of your pitches for Luminoah in Charlottesville, recently at Children's National. And so, there's a lot of momentum that you've built, a lot of perspective that you've gained given your global experiences. And so there's two things I kind of want to come back to. One, at Luminoah, just telling us a little bit more about that. And then just want to talk a little bit about how you've developed the team, how you've sort of positioned yourself as a leader. But first off, let's talk a little bit about Luminoah. The story is impactful, it's heartwarming, and for folks that don't know, I think it's a true testament to your entrepreneurial journey.
In 2019 in August, it's a day we'll never forget as a family. My wife and I noticed that my son was starting to choke on his saliva and also just eating, anything you would start to aspirate, and took him to UVA for a swallow study, later an MRI, and found that he had a tumor in his jugular foramen in the base of his skull. And our whole life was completely turned upside down suddenly. Before that day, a normal active 3-year-old hanging out with his twin sister, starting preschool. And the next day, he's in the pediatric ICU with an impaired airway and in a medical coma for about 10 days. It was, one of the most challenging journeys and experiences that our family's ever faced. And, fortunately, fast forward today, Noah's 7 years old, healthy, strong. He's got a scar from his port and his gastronomy button, but you'd never know he was sick, right? And so just an incredible kid who's healthy and, and been in remission, and hopefully will never have to go back to what we experienced. We came home as a caregiver, we came home with a lot of medical equipment that we didn't have any training on. One was, Noah can no longer eat and drink safely by mouth. And so he had an enteral nutrition pump that he came home with, which is standard of care. As you come home with an IV pole, a pump that needs gravity feeds, and a giving set that, you prime out for several minutes. And so you're essentially tethered to an IV pole. Some have success with a backpack for upwards of 24 hours a day. And so now you're asking a kid to sit on a couch and watch TV. The feeds weren't intuitive. A lot of, for us, like we had grandma and grandpa, nurses ourselves, and there's a lot of training involved. It took a lot of time to set up and clean a feed. And there was no data tracking. There was no connectivity. Here we were in 2019, and we're writing handwritten logs from the last time Noah got a feed. And the last thing you want is an immunocompromised kid now having failure to thrive and having malnutrition. And so we're just really surprised that, there wasn't a more portable, intuitive, and connected device. And so on the last day of chemo for Noah, there's a rocket ship painting, and we talked a lot about space. And so we merged illumination, the measure of light, with Noah's name, Luminoah, that's the name of the company, to create a brighter future for people that need enteral nutrition. And our vision is to create a new standard of care to improve the quality of life and, reduce the readmissions to the hospital due to malnutrition. So that was, a little over 4 years ago. And today we're, really close to submitting to the FDA for our device, which we just finished a human factor study, and the impact that patients are sharing with us that they see this product having on their lives is really what drives us every single day. In this study and just some feedback over the past 4 years, it's not uncommon that a user will break down in tears and say that, after they're sharing all the challenges they're dealing with their current, device, and we show them the device that we've developed, and there's an emotional response to how that's going to, change the way that they live, or their child or their mother lives, and give them freedom back to be able to walk and be active if they're able to reduce the amount of time it takes to run a feed and then to have access to real-time nutritional data. So we're really excited about this next bit of this journey, and can't wait till the day that we're at a place that users can use this device in the real world.
Yeah, it's such an inspirational story, and something that's been so close to home for you and your family. First of all, we're just glad to hear that everyone's happy and healthy. That's the most important. But there's a lot of patients out there that also have similar challenges, and so what you're building is not only something that you've seen to be really successful for other patients, but also something that, you saw the immediate need and were able to craft that around, where you were in that time in your life. And, fast forward, you've raised a $6 million Series A on the forefront of a Series B here, hopefully in the next couple of months. And so, as you talk about just assembling your team and your advisors and your board, talk to me about how sort of you thought about that strategically. I know you have two kind of primary components. There's the medical device and the hardware, and there's a big software component here as well. When you think about the feedback loops between care providers and patients, you've developed an app and infrastructure around that, which obviously has some engineering aspects to it. So talk to me about how you were able to essentially scale that team, and really in terms of you being the leader, and guiding the company forward. They always say find good mentors, surround yourself with people that are smarter with you with a specific lens and expertise. And so we love the more just sort of how you approach that.
Yeah. So, in the early stages, in 2019, the company started, I was just really using kind of what I learned at Pfizer, research and clinical trials, and better understanding the market. And, Noah was getting chemo and sedated at the time. And so you control the controllables, focus on what you can, and couldn't quit thinking about this problem. And then later was introduced to someone, at UVA who, oversees a department of biomedical engineering students at UVA. And then also was connected to Nikki Hastings, who runs Stevo Biohub. And, Nikki invited me to an event at Stevo Biohub, and just thinking about how do we get this thing started, and was questioning whether or not I should, at the time, right? You have these ideas and problems that you're looking to solve, but, knew it'd be a long journey to get there. And so I was really grateful for both those connections, because without Stevo Biohub and without the support of bringing in, right when COVID hit, the company started in March of 2020, all the BME master students at UVA were losing their internships at Medtronics and others. And so I was fortunate through, a grant and some support to be able to hire 3 really smart students out of UVA. One, Hill Johnson, who was our founding engineer, and is now, our senior product manager, still working with us today. And so, I was, a lot of that was luck. At the beginning, you hire three people, and ended up being really incredible interns that work with us and made this an incredible research project. So Hill continued working with me, and then later we raised a seed round with a family office and a venture capital fund and a couple angel investors. And then, at that point, we focus on the 5 P's of pressure testing. One is, what's your problem? And clearly understanding that with feedback from dozens and dozens of users and, administrators and kind of purchasers of your product. Can you solve the problem through technology with the product? Can you patent it? Can you, do you really understand your regulatory pathway and pressure test that? Pricing and reimbursement. Can you build a business model? And then what's your plan and your people, right, to execute on that? And so, I believe that if one was lucky just through the networks established over a lifetime and a career in healthcare was really valuable, but also the networks of people locally. We're in Charlottesville, Virginia, and it's proven to be an incredible place to start a medical device company. People are very open and willing to connect you. And I also believe that if you've got a story and a problem that's worth solving, and if it's hard not to be inspired by kind of the problems that we're solving for so many users around the world. And there's a lot of parallels to what we're doing to kind of where the diabetes space was. If you think about 12, 15 years ago, and really creating a more consumer-friendly, enteral pump that is highly intuitive and with data analytics. And so it's an exciting problem to solve. And so we were really lucky to be connected some great leaders who have exited from medical device companies in the past, and later that came from people who have really transformed the diabetes space for people. And so it was important at the beginning to build a really good advisory group. One of those leaders, Marty Weiner, who was a founding engineer at Pinterest and first CTO at Reddit, without meeting Marty at a Civo BioHub event, I mean, it really was one of the things that transformed our trajectory, right? It's, being able to come in and put low-level code on the device and think through kind of the data analytics and architecture of the software early on, and some really amazing mechanical and design engineers that came in who had been working in the space for 20 years, who were excited to be a part of this journey. And so, in those early stages, it was so important for every single hire and every consultant to be, kind of what the ideal team player book says is like humble, hungry, and smart, and that are there for the right reasons, and are there because they believe that users deserve something better, and they're there each day to solve problems for them. And that's kind of how we built that early stage team.
Yeah, and the journey is well documented. Civo BioHub's an incredible organization. We work closely with them as well in Charlottesville. And as you think about what Luminoah has become, and specific the hardware, complementing it with the software, folks talk a lot about the technology readiness levels and bridging that valley of death. You almost had like a double valley, right? Like you had to think about like the hardware, you had to think of the software. They've certainly evolved since your beta. And so can you take us through just sort of, 2019, 2020, you're in beta, you have some sort of, concept device. Now you've refined it, I would assume probably dozens of times. And, just a little bit of insight into maybe some of how you mitigated some of those risks, but then how did you mature the product to where it is today and obviously continue to adapt it?
Yeah, in those early stages, you're ideating with, I'm making up a number, but it felt like hundreds of designs, right? And we had a great firm that we were working with at the time to help, really think through all those designs and really first focusing on user needs, and then ultimately those turning into user requirements. And then we went through several working prototypes over the years that continue to, those prototypes continue to get smaller and, more powerful, better battery life, better, PCB boards. We went through, I don't know how many designs of PCB boards over the years. But, eventually it gets to a point where you say, enough this is an incredible technology. Let's put pencils down, and you go into a design freeze, right? And that happened for us last year. And then, then you're building out your EQMS system, getting into verification and validation stage. And so, and then, ultimately in the human factors. And so, the hardware is in its final form, that'll be a commercial product. And then, you've got on our hardware device, you have low-level software and then BLE connection into a mobile and a back-end cloud. And so, that is continuing to be on the back end, on the mobile and cloud experience can continue to evolve and change, right? And so, so you spend kind of spurts of funding. I think in a medical device company, when I have a good core team of hardware, software, BLE, that you have as FTEs, and then you're bringing in firms, the product teams on the consulting side as you're building out software stacks. And then ultimately those folks become FTEs, and then you have full software, hardware kind of product teams that are working together. And so it does get, it's like several companies within one, right? Because you think about the diabetes space and kind of how that works with insulin pump companies and the consumable, and then Dexcom on top on a, for that being a different parallel, but, as kind of a artificial pancreas algorithm, we're building hardware and software that will eventually continue to evolve and change and continue to improve outcomes.
Yeah, well said. And, obviously the experience that you've gained, just all the different dynamics of building the company. I mean, it's probably never a dull moment. Each day is new and exciting. And, when you think about talent management in particular, I mean, how many employees do you have now?
So we're at 10 FTEs today. I think we've got about 40 something people working on the project.
Yeah. So going from 4 combination of you and UVA students to a team of, let's say, 50, what have been some of the hurdles that you've had to overcome in building that culture? What is your approach to leadership? What is your approach to, talent management?
I think the key, like as a CEO, and kind of you're leading the direction of the company, the vision for what life should look like for users, but not just taking your experience. Like for me, this started because of a personal need, but not assuming that our need was the only one, right? Like, sure, we're hearing a voice of customer, and with dozens and dozens of users to get that feedback, but really setting the tone and the vision of the company, setting the direction of where we're going to be in 3, 5, 10 years, and what this company could become, and creating the culture of going back to that humble, hungry, and smart, but also finding team players that are there to support each other, that people are always learning and growing, and that no one knows the answers, and that you just have good, kind people that are good collaborators, but also push back on one another, and that's okay. We want people pushing back. But also that bad news filters up really quickly all the way throughout the organization. We want it to be a very transparent environment, so that as we're having problems or setbacks, that I find out quickly, and that everyone in the organization is aware of it, and that we have a plan of action around each of those challenges, and that we share that all the way up to the board, equally transparently all the way throughout the organization. And then it's, finding the best and brightest people, paying over, the 50th percentile, right, for your geo base, and making sure that you've got really good policies in place, that you're supporting people both on benefits and salary and comp, that you pay really well, but that, you're hiring people that are here for the right reasons as well. Obviously, if there's in the future the company does well, people will continue to do well. I believe that every employee should be an owner of the company, which is really important to me. And so you're building owners, you're finding people are here because they want to transform the lives of people, and then they all kind of embody this value system, not because it's forced on them, but it's something that's really important as to weed out talent when hiring, that it's just a natural fit, right, that they fit that culture as a result. But we're so lucky to have some incredible executive leaders. Garrett Marin, who was the senior head of product at Tandem Diabetes. He's out in San Diego. He's done an incredible job. Continue to build out the team. Mike Semmers, who's our VP of operations here in Charlottesville, obviously Hill Johnson, our senior product manager, and incredible hires. Our head of quality, Raleigh, and Hunter, who heads our software. These are people with decades of experience, right, either building companies or leading teams, and so I think it's really critical, to build a team of leaders who all follow that culture and that belief system, but that work really hard and drive OKRs forward, but also, have a realistic view of what can be done in a certain timeline. But have been there and done that and dealt and faced with a lot of hard problems in their careers, and they're not dealing with that for the first time, right? And it's muscle memory. So when they get there, they know exactly what to do. And so, I mean, I feel so lucky just to wake up every day and get to work with this team. It's incredible.
Yeah. And, when you think about the capital market environment too, just pivoting a little bit, you've been on the forefront of having to really bootstrap at front, right? Friends and family, some venture, now you're looking towards some additional capital raise. So, in today's environment, how do you approach capital raising, fundraising? You've obviously come a long way in the evolution of the product, and, there's certainly a product market fit when you think about the strategics and what they need in terms of patient care and, outpatient care for specifically these types of uses. But has it been challenging for you all? Has it been, a bumpy ride? Or, what is your approach to that narrative, that story, and then converting that into some active investment?
I think if your vision is to create a new standard of care for any therapeutic or technology class, you're a fundable company, right? Right. And if the market size is large enough, the opportunity and the need is there, and you've got a real opportunity to completely disrupt a category or a market, right, those companies will get funded. My belief, regardless of the environment, but that doesn't come without a lot of hard work and persistency and diligence, right, in the process. And so we closed on our Series A in June of last year, but it becomes a very time-consuming process to get there, and that's just part of my role as CEO, right? You're thinking externally, but also you're involved with day-to-day on the internal, but make sure you build a really good leadership team around you to focus on some of the key outcomes internally. But you have to be out there each and every day once you're ready, and make sure you're leveraging your network to get there, to the finish line, to capitalize. And so I think regardless of market you're looking at, where are you going to be in 5 years from a revenue standpoint, waterfall that backwards, right? Look at potential exit value in the future and that pathway, have a clear understanding of how you're going to get there, get COGS down, drive growth, and get margins to where they need to be an attractive exit in the future. And for us, we're building a company that, could stand alone at this point, right? We're and we want to keep driving innovations forward. And so what does that pipeline of growth look like, both on the innovation you're developing now, but pipeline of products that can realize our vision as a company, and then, driving that story across how you're going to get there through that Series B investment. And so we'll start a Series B raise as soon as we submit to the FDA here in the near future, and I'll be testing the market again. But it's never easy. I don't think, regardless of the time of the macroeconomic conditions, that it's ever easy. At least that's been my experience, because I've always had a unique macroeconomic environment as I'm doing capital raises. But I recognize that I'll be talking to a lot of people, but it also, we're really lucky to have a really good cap table with incredible investors that are behind us, that are really excited about what we're doing in our Series B. So,
yeah, we're gonna all be watching, and the environment, as you said, macro, it's never easy. It's more challenging in years like 2023, but to a certain regard, the product sells itself, and the team that you've built at Luminoah, the expertise that you have, it's just been really exciting to watch and see where you go next. And you stood up your company in Charlottesville, Virginia. You mentioned Civo Biohub, the impact and importance of that community there. UVA as an anchor, a lot of great R&D coming out of there, a lot of great PIs within UVA's ecosystem. And you've also been recognized as a BioBuzz Awards finalist. So what's the importance of the community to you, and a little bit, I guess, more specifically, to be named as a finalist for the BioBuzz Awards?
Yeah, it's being named as part of the BioBuzz Awards has been an incredible honor for us, and being recognized outside of your own community, kind of broadening that out into the DC, Maryland, Virginia region is really validating. I mean, the entire team, it gives a lot of energy to everyone on our team. Having this kind of recognition and being a finalist along so many incredible companies in the region who are doing equally amazing things, right, in different therapeutic classes. And so for us, it really validates internally, but also externally, kind of that we're on the right path. And it also opens up networks of partners that you can work with, and such as your firm, as well, and others, and working with Rich out there as well, kind of thinking about ways to partner with people, whether it's with non-diluted grant funding or real estate, the real estate side of the business, to finding talent as a result of kind of these types of nominations. When you put out a new position description, people are doing their own diligence on the company, and kind of seeing the nominations for these types of prizes are really helpful of attracting talent as you're growing and scaling. And then as you're raising capital as well, it really gets more public exposure to what you're doing. And so we're just so grateful to be nominated and to be a part of this incredible program.
Yeah, very well stated. And Neal, you've been someone that I think everyone is beginning to hear more and more about, Luminoah, and your continued successes. So we're obviously wishing you the best of luck, and really delighted for you to be able to spend some time with us today on BioBlast. Neal Piper, the CEO and founder of Luminoah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Devin. It's great to be here.